In just 8 seasons, one man won 6 Premier League titles, including 4 in a row, completed a treble, hit 100 points, and turned players nobody believed in into some of the most valuable footballers on the planet. But how on earth was this even possible? This is the story of how Pep Guardiola quite literally broke English football. Manchester City have won their 4th consecutive Premier League title. To understand how Pep conquered England, we have to start in the summer of 2016, when he arrived in Manchester fresh off 3 consecutive Bundesliga titles with Bayern Munich. City were already a title-winning club under Roberto Mancini and Manuel Pellegrini, but they were nowhere near consistent dominance. They had money, they had talent, what they didn't have was a system. And that's exactly what Pep brought. His first season was a disaster by his standards. City finished 3rd and won nothing. Pundits were lining up to say it. The Premier League is different. Tiki-taka doesn't work here. Pep can't handle the physicality, the rain, the fixture congestion, the whole thing. But what people didn't realise is that Pep was using that entire first year as a scouting mission. He was watching, he was learning, and he was identifying exactly which players needed to go and exactly which players he needed to bring in. And this is where the rebuild started.
De Bruyne! Shooting chance! Into the back! Goes inside. Still Doku! Into the corner of the net!
Pep looked at his squad and said the goalkeeper has to go. Joe Hart, a City legend, a fan favourite, a player who had been at the club for over a decade, was dropped. Pep didn't care about sentiment. He needed a goalkeeper who could play with his feet, and Hart wasn't that. First it was Claudio Bravo from Barcelona, which didn't work out. But in the summer of 2017, Pep got the man he actually wanted, Ederson from Benfica. And that signing changed everything. But it wasn't just Ederson. Pep looked at his fullback situation and essentially ripped the entire position group out of the squad. Alexander Kolarov, gone. Gael Clichy, gone. Bakary Sagna, gone. Pablo Zabaleta, gone. All 4 senior fullbacks out the door in a single summer. In their place came Kyle Walker from Tottenham and Benjamin Mendy from Monaco. He also brought in Bernardo Silva and Danilo. Now you have to understand something about Pep. Every single signing he makes serves a tactical purpose. He doesn't buy names, he buys profiles. Walker gave him recovery pace and the ability to invert into a back 3. Ederson gave him the sweeper keeper who could start attacks with a 60-yard pass. Bernardo Silva gave him a player who could play literally anywhere across the front line and midfield. Every piece had a role, and with these pieces in place, the 2017-18 season became something English football had never seen before: the Centurions.
Agüero chance here for Manchester City to win it, and he's Sterling! Oh, and Manchester City! And absolutely amazing again!
City opened the season and just did not stop winning. An 18-game winning streak between August and December broke the Premier League record. They were playing football from another dimension. David Silva orchestrating from the half spaces, Kevin De Bruyne in the prime of his career, Leroy Sané burning fullbacks alive on the left wing, Raheem Sterling finishing everything on the right, Sergio Agüero doing what Agüero does. And behind all of it, a system so fluid and so relentless that teams were beaten before they even kicked off. City clinched the title with 5 games to spare. They finished 19 points ahead of second place Manchester United. They scored 106 goals. They won 32 of 38 matches. They recorded the best goal difference in Premier League history. And on the final day of the season, Gabriel Jesus scored in stoppage time at Southampton to take them to 100 points. The first and only team to ever reach that number in English top flight history. The Centurions didn't just win the league, they rewrote the record books. Most points, most wins, most goals, most consecutive victories, biggest winning margin, most away wins, most away points. They broke everything. And the crazy thing is, this was only the beginning. The following season, 2018-19, City faced a Liverpool team that was arguably the second best Premier League side ever assembled at that point.
Salah's taking all the time in the world.
Jurgen Klopp's men pushed City to the absolute limit, finishing on 97 points, which would have won the league in any other season in history. But City finished on 98. They won their final 14 games of the season to hold off Liverpool by a single point. And they didn't just win the league, they beat Chelsea on penalties in the League Cup final. Then they thrashed Watford 6-0 in the FA Cup final. The domestic treble. No English team had ever done it before. But then in 2019-20, something shifted. Liverpool finally broke through and won the title by 18 points. City finished second. The doubters came back. Is the dynasty over? Was it just a 2-year peak? But here's the thing about Pep. Just when you think you've figured him out, he reinvents his entire system. And this is what separates him from every other manager in Premier League history, the tactical shape-shifting. In his first title-winning season, it was a possession-heavy 4-3-3, with traditional width from the fullbacks and David Silva pulling the strings. In 2020-21, with David Silva gone and no recognised striker available for long stretches, Pep introduced the false 9 system. He rotated Bernardo Silva, Phil Foden, Ilkay Gundogan and even Kevin De Bruyne through the striker position. Nobody knew who was playing where from one game to the next. The shape and possession morphed into something like a 2-3-3-2. João Cancelo started drifting inside from fullback into central midfield. John Stones was no longer just a centre-back, he was stepping into midfield with the ball and operating as a deep-line playmaker. Pep took the concept of inverted fullbacks, which he had experimented with at Bayern Munich with Joshua Kimmich and Philipp Lahm, and turned it into a weapon that the entire league had to reckon with. Then, when Mendy tore his ACL at the start of the 17-18 season, Pep deployed a left-footed central midfielder, Fabian Delph, as his left-back for the rest of the season. The idea is simple on paper. Instead of your fullback overlapping and hugging the touchline, they tuck inside into the midfield channel. This creates an overload in the centre of the pitch and gives you control of the game. But simple on paper is another thing entirely in practice, because the players executing it needed to be able to play two entirely different positions depending on whether City had the ball or not. Kyle Walker was a right back without the ball and a centre back with it. Cancelo was a left back without the ball and a central midfielder with it. John Stones was a centre-back without the ball and a holding midfielder with it. Rico Lewis came through the academy as a full-back and Pep immediately started playing him as an interior midfielder. These aren't natural things for defenders to do. Pep made them natural. He coached them into football players that didn't exist before he got his hands on them. City won the 2020-21 title with 12 points to spare. Foden and Gundogan emerged as the main goal threats in the false 9 system. Gundogan scored 13 league goals from midfield. Foden announced himself as the future of the club, and City reached the Champions League final for the first time in their history. They lost to Chelsea 1-0, but the foundation was built. The 2021-22 season was another slugfest with Liverpool. City won the title on the final day with 93 points to Liverpool's 92. 1 point, again. Pep's side just kept finding ways to win when it mattered most. The relentlessness of this team was inhuman. But here's where it gets truly historic. In the summer of 2022, Manchester City signed a traditional number 9, a target man, a goal machine, Erling Haaland. And once again, Pep proved the doubters wrong. People said Haaland wouldn't fit the system. He doesn't press, he doesn't link play, he's not a Pep player. But Pep didn't try to make Haaland fit his old system. He built a new system around Haaland. He told every creative player on the pitch to look for Haaland first before making any other decision. He showed Kevin De Bruyne, Jack Grealish and Bernardo Silva video after video of Haaland's movement and asked them, did you look? If the answer was no, there was a conversation. The result? Haaland broke the Premier League's single-season goal-scoring record with 36 goals, 52 in all competitions, 6 hat-tricks. More goals than some entire teams. And City didn't just win the league that year, they completed the treble.
Just a word on it early.
Hundreds of thousands of blues.
The 2022-23 treble season is the crown jewel of the Guardiola era, and arguably the greatest season any English club has ever had. Arsenal led the table for most of the campaign under Mikel Arteta, who learned everything he knows from being Pep's assistant throughout the Centurions and domestic treble seasons. But around the midway point of the season, City was struggling. They conceded 2 or more goals in 8 of their first 29 games across all competitions. Haaland was scoring, but the defensive balance wasn't right. So what did Pep do? He evolved again. He took the inverted fullback concept to its next logical logical step by introducing a 3-2 build-up structure, with John Stones stepping into midfield alongside Rodri as a second pivot. This gave City more defensive stability in transition while still maintaining their attacking overloads. And from that point, City went on a 25-game unbeaten run that blew the title race wide open. They won the Premier League. They beat Manchester United 2-1 in the FA Cup final, with Gundogan scoring twice, including the fastest goal in FA Cup final history after just 12 seconds. And then they flew to Istanbul for the Champions League final against Inter Milan.
The game was tense. It was ugly at times. Haaland had just 18 touches in 90 minutes. Ederson almost gifted Inter an opener. But in the 68th minute, Bernardo Silva cut the ball back from the right side, and there was Rodri. A side-footed finish into the bottom corner. 1-0. Ederson produced an unbelievable save from Romelu Lukaku in the final minutes. And that was it. Manchester City were champions of Europe, treble winners, only the second English club in history to do it after Manchester United in 1999. But Pep wasn't done. The following season, 2023-24, he led City to a fourth consecutive Premier League title. No English team in the history of the top flight had ever done that. Not Sir Alex Ferguson's Manchester United, not any of the great Liverpool sides of the 1970s and 80s. Nobody. Pep did it first. Phil Foden was the star man that year, winning PFA Player of the Year. Haaland won the Golden Boot for the second straight season. And on the final day of the season, City beat West Ham 3-1 at the Etihad to finish 2 points ahead of Arsenal and etch their names into the history books forever. 4 in a row, 6 titles in 7 years, the most dominant stretch English football has ever witnessed. Now, let's talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough. Pep Guardiola is the greatest player development machine in Premier League history. The transfer value inflation of players under his coaching is genuinely absurd. Alexander Zinchenko was signed from the Russian second division for £1.7 million in 2016. He was a teenager nobody had heard of. Under Pep, he became a Premier League winning fullback and midfielder and was sold to Arsenal for £30 million. That's nearly an 18 times return. Ferran Torres arrived from Valencia for around £21 million. After just 18 months and 1 Premier League title, Barcelona came calling and paid £55 million to take him back to Spain. City more than doubled their money on a player who was 21 years old. Raheem Sterling was already a good player when City bought him from Liverpool for £49 million. But under Pep, he became one of the best wingers in the world. 131 goals, 4 Premier League titles. He was sold to Chelsea for £47.5 million after 7 years of service, which is remarkable for a player entering his final contract year. Gabriel Jesus cost £27 million from Palmeiras, sold to Arsenal for £45 million. Leroy Sané arrived from Schalke for around £37 million and left for Bayern Munich at approximately £45 million. Danilo came in from Real Madrid for £26.5 million and went to Juventus for £33 million. Julian Alvarez was the ultimate example. City triggered his release clause at River Plate for just £14 million. 2 seasons later, after a Premier League title, a treble and a World Cup, Atletico Madrid paid an initial £65 million that could rise to over £80 million. That's nearly a 6 times return in 2 years. And then there's the academy. Cole Palmer came through City's youth system and was sold to Chelsea for £42.5 million. Jadon Sancho left for Dortmund for £10 million and was eventually sold to Manchester United for £73 million, with City receiving a sell-on clause payment. Romeo Lavia went to Southampton for £22.5 million. The academy alone generated over £440 million in sales during the Guardiola era. Pep turns good players into great players, and great players into all-time greats. John Stones was a £50 million question mark when he arrived from Everton. People said he couldn't defend, that he was too mistake-prone. Under Pep, he became one of the most technically gifted centre-backs in football history. A player who could step into midfield during a Champions League final and complete every single one of his dribble attempts. Only Messi, Ronaldo and Ronaldinho had matched that in a Champions League final before. Phil Foden was a 17-year-old kid from Stockport when Pep first put him in the squad.
Instead of loaning him out like every other manager would have done, Pep kept him close, trained him every day, and slowly built him into the PFA Player of the Year and the youngest ever Premier League winner during the Centurions season. Foden's peak transfer value reached nearly £140 million. Kevin De Bruyne was already elite when Pep arrived, but he became the best midfielder on the planet under Guardiola. The system unlocked De Bruyne's ability to operate in the half spaces in ways that no other team could replicate. He became the fastest player in Premier League history to reach 100 assists. Rodri went from a good defensive midfielder at Atletico Madrid to the Ballon d'Or winner. That doesn't happen without Pep. And this is where I'm going to give you my opinion. Pep Guardiola is the greatest manager in Premier League history, and it's not close.
Sir Alex Ferguson had longevity. 26 years at Manchester United, 13 Premier League titles, and nobody is taking that away from him. But what Pep has done in terms of pure tactical innovation, sustained excellence, and the sheer standard of football he has demanded from his teams is unmatched by anyone who has ever managed in this league. Ferguson's United never hit 100 points, never won 4 in a row, never completed the domestic treble. Arsene Wenger had the Invincibles, which is one of the great achievements in football history, but Arsenal never dominated for more than a couple of seasons at a time. Jose Mourinho's Chelsea were brilliant, but he never stuck around long enough to build a dynasty. Pep did all of it. 6 titles in 7 years, 100 points, the domestic treble, the continental treble, 4 in a row. He reinvented his tactical system at least 4 or 5 times across those 8 seasons. He turned academy kids into superstars. He turned £2 million signings into £30 million sales. He turned a club that had never won the Champions League into European champions. He changed what it means to be a Premier League winning team. Before Pep, you could win the league with 80-something points. After Pep, 90 points might not even be enough. He raised the standards so high that the chasing pack had to fundamentally restructure how they operate just to stay competitive. Liverpool had to match City's intensity under Klopp. Arsenal had to hire Pep's own assistant in Arteta and spend hundreds of millions just to get close. Every top club in England had to evolve because of what Pep built at City. The 80s belonged to Liverpool. The 90s belonged to Ferguson. The 2000s were split between Wenger, Mourinho and Sir Alex. The 2010s were as open as the Premier League had ever seen, with Ancelotti, Mancini, Pellegrini, Ferguson, Mourinho, Conte and even Ranieri winning titles. All until one man showed up. And that one man can say that he owned an entire decade from 2016 to 2026. Pep Guardiola broke English football, and the Premier League will never be the same because of it. So if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe, and if you want more stories like this, check out the video on screen now.
First of 20